Hello, this week's lecture for the first week of March for Archaeology Cymru looked at human remains as cultural resources. It was a departure from looking at the various archaeologies around the world and the illicit trade in antiquities and out-of-place archaeological objects. But then again, this is as relevant as all of those topics. Human remains in many museums are treated as cultural resources to be used for the purpose of analysis and display. However, I sometimes feel that when human bones are placed on display, it goes against the dignity of the person. They probably wish their bones to have been placed in the ground forever. The treatment of such material often ignores such as the views of those who are or who believe themselves to be the living descendants. Many human remains are in storage in many of our world museums and in basements in the domains of archaeological organisations. Debate surrounding the treatment and return of human remains has come to the fore in recent years as a result of protest movements by Native Americans and similarly Australian Aboriginals and other peoples around the world, for obvious reasons, object to the treatment of the remains of their ancestors. So firstly, the image that you see in front of you is of a family of Aboriginal Australians. This family themselves encamped in a rainforest at Cairns in 1890. Shows a group of people who are innocently away from the rest of the world with respect for their own ancestors and their burial traditions and the way they live. However, when you mix that with modern society, you see that Aboriginal peoples slowly start to change in their appearance and their perspective with their own world because we've influenced it. Their human remains are as relevant to them today as the skeleton that they wander around in the living. They feel that the display of their own ancestors in British museums, in American museums, in French museums, but as an example, the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, they particularly feel that their ancestors and people from Africa and America feel the same, should be repatriated to them and should not be placed on display. The Oxford Pitt Rivers Museum has returned some of the bone collection to peoples in Australia, but still many remains are still placed on display. Those bodies being placed on display that have a direct link with the people in the living. Today, the Australian Archaeological Association has drawn up a code of conduct suggesting that only the remains of known individuals should be released for reburial. The code stresses the need to involve Aboriginals in the process of cultural resource management and suggests that this might be achieved through training for projects in museum curatorialship, training the Aboriginals themselves, the establishment of Aboriginal keeping places for human remains which would be available for scholars on terms decided by the Aboriginal keepers. However, I feel that we have got no right to tell an indigenous culture what to do with their bones. They have got a right to have them in the ground or above the ground, displayed in the state that those people wish to displayed, thought of in the living. This is the enslavement of Aboriginals in Australia. Do we really have a right to tell them what to do with their own ancestors? Aboriginal peoples in Australia and other parts of the world had burial traditions that are akin to our own burial traditions in the past, but still very important to them today. Sky burial, for one. Stop desecrating Aboriginal burial grounds. Very appropriate in this signage. For the repatriation of Aboriginals across the world is slowly taking place. And finally, those individuals who were dug up by archaeologists seeking to understand the past. A past that they had no right to interfere in. Many museums today have boxes and boxes of bones like this. Aboriginal culture dictated by us today. Is this so far away from how they were 200 years ago? How much have we changed their culture by digging up their ancestors and altering their mindsets and their links to the past, which is all important. Human remains don't have to be in the ground to be archaeological artefacts that should be left there on the surface as well. Many Aboriginal cultures allowed the remains of their ancestors to remain above the surface. Do we have a right to take them just because they're above the surface? They're above the surface in the same parallel to bodies buried below the surface. We have no right to take these bones. Showing a little bit about Aboriginal burial ceremony. And the rock art of Aboriginal tradition. Aboriginal tradition tells us today that they still paint on the rock art in areas that there is ancient rock art. Is a continuous breathing tradition of rock art which we have got no right to interfere with. We've got no right to tell them to stop painting rock art on earlier rock art, because there's a direct link with their ancestors and who they are and their very being. Moving on to this next image, shows Tasmanian Aboriginals and the special case of the skeleton of Truganani, who were referred to as True. True was an Aboriginal that was part of a society that was slowly becoming extinct, hunted to extinction in the 1800s. Many Aboriginals were murdered in order to provide specimens for Western museums, whilst many also died as a result of disease and very, very poor treatment, being hunted down. This is a group of Tasmanian Aboriginals, True, being seated. We're interfering with who they are. There's True again, the littler lady on the left. True died on the 8th of May 1876, finally being recognised as one of the last Aboriginals of her very society. And the terrible thing is that True's body was disinterred shortly after her death and placed in a museum. Would you be able to see your own loved ones being placed on display? How would you feel about that today? But this is exactly what happened to True. The Advisory Committee of the Australian Institute of Aboriginal Studies recommended that the Tasmanian Museum should release True's body for cremation in accordance with traditional practice. The museum objected, but was forced by the Tasmanian government to comply, because many Aboriginals in Tasmanian tradition believe that the soul of a dead person is only at peace once the body had been completely destroyed. And as an archaeologist with so many years' experience, I see that as archaeologists treat the human remains of our past so appallingly that it makes me ashamed, very highly ashamed, to ever be connected with being an archaeologist. But I cannot wipe that from my own being. More bones on display in various museums. Moving on to something else as well, the reburial debate in America. Initially, the 1906 Antiquities Act in the USA defined Native American remains and sacred objects of antiquities and stated that all such objects found on federal land were to be declared state property and seized from Native American burial grounds. Under the Act, excavation could be carried out by scientific institutions, and it therefore sanctioned the scientific interest in these remains. Now, looking at this, The Native American community were quite horrified by this. And it was even highlighted again. In 1979, the Archaeological Resources Protection Act in the USA states that such Native American remains must be curated in a suitable university, museum or other scientific or educational institution. But I feel again as an archaeologist that we've got no right to tell the Native Americans what to do with such a long tradition. Many Native Americans can trace their tradition way back. There's certain levels that could be argued, for example in this illustration, that we can work out when turkeys were first domesticated in America 2,000 years ago. But do we have a right to go on further and touch these skulls that have been buried with the tradition of Native American society? Native American burial ground. 1974, the International Native American Treaty Council in South Dakota, with delegates from 97 Native American nations, established a protest organization, American Indians Against Desecration. The AIAD estimated that there are around 500,000 Native American bodies in US institutions and a further 500,000 in foreign institutions. However, the position of the Society for American Archaeology opposes the American Indians Against Desecration and feels that archaeology has a precedent over Native American wishes and that all artifacts should remain in American museums, depriving Native Americans of the right of their tradition. Native American burial ground, however, up to today now, Native Americans are protecting their burial grounds with the artifacts above and below the surface. And woe betide you excavating one of these Native American burial grounds, because it is so close to their tradition. Bodies, even if they're 2,500 years old, are to be protected as if somebody were buried the next day, and they feel you have got no right to interfere with their way of life. There are occasions as an archaeologist that I would say that if accidental remains from Native America are found, then you can learn something. Native American excavation site in Alaska showed early evidence of the links between Asia and America. But even then, even though the bodies might be 14,000 years old, you can look at them and then rebury them, not to be left in institutions. All human remains should be reburied, no matter what scientific value they've got. After study they are to be reburied, but we have got no right to force Native Americans to reveal the secrets of their burial traditions. It's their society and we've got no right to interfere. More burial sites. However, German museums display scalps of the Native American Plains Indians, as their society was completely and systematically destroyed by the United States government. German collectors collected scalps and took them for display in German museums, and it's so right for the Native Americans to ask for these scalps to be returned. They're a sign of great respect that they are to be given back to the Native Americans and not on display and in storage vaults of German museums. The American Indians Against Desecration statement to the World Archaeology Congress in 1986 states, "It is the AIAD's objective, goal and intent that all Native American remains and sacred objects buried therewith are returned to their nations, relatives and allies for appropriate disposition. Anything less is unacceptable. We believe in an afterlife. That which is called death to us is only a change in life as we continue a journey to the spirit world. Any disruption, delay or halt in that journey is a violation of personal religious beliefs to that individual, to his descendants, and to those of the present and future who will embark upon that journey. Could it be that the Native American experts didn't care that their acts were interfering and affecting traditional religious practices? Or did they justify the genocide of Indian religion by placing a higher priority on their objectives? Had archaeologists concluded that the religious beliefs of the American Indians were wrong in their personal embrace of atheism, beliefs on the Native American, and to hell with the changes on Native American lives? As a fitting movement, coming closer to home, very appropriately, the Uffington Halls. Not so long ago, every 7 years, or closer than that, peoples from the local village of Uffington would hold fairs above the horse at the hill fort, and would lovingly remove the old chalk and replace it with new, fresh white chalk, displaying the horse in its radiance as a symbol for the people of Uffington and further afield. A tradition that went on for 3,000 years, looking at the thermoluminescence dating. However, recently, because of the National Trust, who now own the site and protect the site, they stopped people from Uffington doing this. People of Uffington have lost the link between the Uffington Halls because they've been prevented from having their fairs and replacing the chalk with new fresh white chalk, which is now done by the National Trust. Their link is now lost. And it's not surprising that over recent years people have defaced the white horse, painted it colours, even added riders to it. And the local people seemingly not to care as they did, simply because we as a state have prevented them from a tradition that has gone on for 3,000 years, and I don't feel that that's right. Whether they wish to change the Uffington Horse, it's their right to do it. It's their tradition, and they should have a right to continue. But alas, governments and Big Brother stop that. Thank you for watching these images and listening to my video log. Thank you very much.